When I started to look into doing a podcast, I knew I had a lot to share and say, and I wanted to do it in an audio format. I was a little intimidated, not going to lie, about how I was going to go about recording and editing and distributing and all those things because technology is not my strong suit. Naturally, I can learn things. And so when I started to take webinars and ask questions on Facebook and other platforms, I decided that Anchor was the best way to go. It's been a bit of a one-stop shop for me. I can record all of my episodes, I can edit them. It's been really nice because it's free. And when I started to do a podcast, it was, okay, how am I going to rebuild my practice? I had to close my practice down because of COVID, federal mandate. So how was I going to rebuild things? How was I going to give myself something to do? Because this defines me. What I do, it defines me. So I really needed an outlet, and the budget was like nothing. So having this free option has been great. I am recording on my laptop, but I can also record on my phone if I decide that's a way to go, or maybe I don't have my laptop on me. And so that's pretty exciting to know I can do it from there too. They also take and distribute to various apps for people to listen on, which again, that is taking one stressor away from me so I can focus on my content. And if it's something you'd like to do, if you have something you'd like to say, I can't recommend it enough for somebody who's a newbie and starting out. And I feel like even if I wasn't, new at this, it's been something I've been doing for a while, I would still like this platform because of the ease of everything. So if it is something you'd like to look into, you can download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm. That's ANCHOR.fm to get started. Welcome to the Infinite Dance. I'm your host, Carrie Arata, Akashic Records reader, psychic sleuth, and spiritual guide. Well, welcome back to all of those who are joining me, who have been joining me since February now. Wow. Thank you. And if you're new to this podcast, welcome. So glad you're here. I wanted to start off with a couple of bits of information. I am looking for anybody who has some tales of this past year related to the pandemic. And I know a lot of us experienced some really, really, really tough times, whether it was physically, emotionally, spiritually, etc. So holding it all, holding space for it all. If you feel like you would like to share what went on with you, please send me an email. I would love to hear about it. And if you would like to have it on the podcast, I'm going to start having podcast episodes about our experiences through this pandemic that I think a lot of us either put our heads down and, went to work, to continue to work because your job or your position was essential, or that you didn't work, or that you got sick, or somebody you love got sick. So if that feels like it's something that feels right to speak about, it's hard when we keep things in. And sometimes we feel like we're the only ones, even though this was global, right? It was really hard to be in the middle of things and talk about them because you were just keeping your head above water. at every turn. So anyways, Carrie Lynn Arata, CarryLynnArata at gmail.com. Please send an email there if you would like to. You can either be a guest on my podcast, or you can send me the information in an email, and I will relay it just as you write it. So yeah, putting that out there. I also wanted to say my process when I research or start to really stream my thoughts into what the next episode will be, I do it a lot around water. Surprise. And this last one, I actually had a lake day, and that was really wonderful to have. And so I got to go to Lake Tahoe and have a little time and swim and just hang out. I met some folks. I met another gal named Carrie from Sebastopol, which I used to live in Sebastopol. So that was serendipitous. And the sweetest little dog named Meeker kept sitting right behind my seat. So he would just come sit under the umbrella with me and hang out with me. He was so cute. So I'm going to probably post some of those pictures on my socials. So look for those this week after the episode airs. So tomorrow and or Wednesday, those will get up on the socials. So yeah, I like to write near water, or sometimes I'm even in the water, like I'm in the bath, and I have these certain notepads, note cards that I bring, and I'll jot things down as I meditate or channel. And so that's just a really what's the word? I feel really focused, and ideas just come. Like I just feel like I feel so much more tapped in when I'm in or near water. So that's what I did for this last one. I had a lake day and really kind of tapped into these ideas of these, not just ideas, but ways that we need to start speaking to each other differently. How a lot of us, it's going to be real uncomfortable. And I also want to point out that I've been hearing a lot of, oh, why are people so sensitive about A, B, C, or D? Okay, pick a thing. And that really needs to be addressed, because I believe we deserve to feel all of the things. And just because you personally don't like it doesn't mean somebody's not valid in saying, ouch, that hurts, ouch, that statement hurts, ouch, that the way you address me is not correct. And we need to really stop being so sensitive, because we spent way too long being insensitive and hiding our feelings and or not expressing our feelings fully as a culture. So this is something that completely needs to change. So this episode is going to be a little on the shorter side. It's not going to be as long. These ideas were streaming out, and I did channel some things, but it left a lot more questions. And so again, if this is something that you have been thinking about too, and you have your own ideas, gosh, I'd love to hear them. And at the end of the episode, I'll give you all the ways you can reach out on the interwebs. So I hear, whether I'm out at the store now, or out eating, or on social media, posts talking about how we begin to rephrase what we say in regards to how we identify ourselves and call each other. And that's been going around for a while. I'm starting to see more recently, though, that have to do with race and racism. And so that is really important. And I'm so glad to have um, information about how to call, an enslaver, and somebody who was enslaved. Yeah, so instead of a slave owner, it's an enslaver, and instead of a slaver, that it's somebody that was enslaved, enslabed. And I think that's really important. Actually, I know it's really important that we start just identifying that differently when we speak or write and communicate with each other. And so, whether it's spiritually energetic or physical harm, um, it's really important to refer to those that have inflicted harm differently. And I know I brought this up in other episodes, actually saying narcissist and being able to use that. Because so many people are like, oh, it wasn't narcissistic, but it actually was, and somebody that is a narcissist, and not even a malignant narcissist, but just narcissist, the way they deal with people, and especially in close relationships, because of course that's where we're going to see it more and experience it more. It's way different than having tendencies. I mean, if this is your MO and this is how you deal with life and people around you, then that is a real big difference than a tendency here and there. But it takes a certain kind of personality. Not every personality, sits in the space of not knowing or being unaware, um, or not caring that they're causing harm to somebody else. So, I mean, really calling somebody what they are, um, is, I know it's going to help us transmute these ways that we've fallen into to change them for good and not have them come back and repeat ever again. For so long, we're told not to talk of such things. Or if we did, they wouldn't have maybe a label per se, except it was more how somebody felt or who they are as the person experiencing the harm or experiencing the enslavement or experiencing harm. And that's it's mind-blowing. I mean, to me, it's really mind-blowing that there wasn't a more of an attention put on the person doing the harm, right? It's like, how do we make it so that behavior is just so that there's no way that can happen? Because how do we start actually believing people that say, hey, I went through this, or this was awful, or I was being mentally or physically held against my will? And a lot of times, people are like, oh, I don't want to get involved if it's like a relationship, or a family thing. But if somebody else is being harmed, you have every right to step in and say, I'll help you get out of this. right? Because a lot of times if it's child or you're just used to that way of being, you don't know how to get yourself out of it. So you're stuck. So you do need some help. I really think that, and that comes to how we're talking to ourselves, that we are able to help each other and assist each other and not living a suffering existence. When we do start to put the correct labels on oppressors, we can begin to transmute the negative stories, yeah? Diverting stories. So many times when I bring up stuff right now, it just happened last weekend, that I start to talk about things that are tougher or make somebody a little bit more uncomfortable because they're not used to going, you can't say that, you can't talk like that. You actually, that kept everybody in this space that doesn't help us move into a future of truly being around each other and coming from love and coming from heart space. Because when somebody's uncomfortable, a lot of times they start to talk about something else. Let's not talk about that subject. I'm going to start talking about something else that's a little bit easier for me to digest because they just don't know where to go. But it's so important that it's not diverted, that if you are bringing something up, stick to what you're trying to say. Even if it's not getting through, maybe necessarily at the moment, it's, you're starting to plant the seed. So when we try to transmute, right, by saying things differently, and when we've come from a place where we've mislabeled an oppressor or called somebody or downplayed it, how many times do you hear somebody downplaying somebody's atrocious behavior or coming up with an excuse? Oh my God. I can't even. Like, there's just no excuse. There's none. And that leads to these stories that we tell ourselves that don't help, that aren't for the highest good of ourselves or those around us. And I started calling them wrong stories. And then I was thinking, are these stories necessarily wrong, or do they help us get through the times? Right? I mean, that came through my head, and then I was like, but did they? I don't think I don't know what it was. And this is as I'm at the lake writing, after I posed the question and I wrote it down, I would get images of a face of a white man, right, with blonde hair, with big plastic glasses. Remember those big plastic glasses from the 80s, and they had the little, like, almost like a blind. They had little slats. So when you looked through them, you were looking through little slats. I'll post pictures of those too. Um, blinders, right? The blinders. It helped to keep the blinders on, which didn't help us to see clearly at all. Because here we have, a blinder on, and you're not being able to see out correctly, or you're seeing these little tiny parts. So you're not even seeing the whole thing. And I know I started off this podcast talking about, if you have questions or if you're talking about this with loved ones or yourself, you're journaling about it, I'd love to know too. Because I know that there's a lot of us that are trying to pose these questions that make a lot of people uncomfortable. And there's just so much resistance to the change. And, that's all we can really rely on in a lifetime is change. And it's gonna, like I titled this episode, it's going to be uncomfortable for a long time. Because if you've been used to doing things a certain way your whole life, and there's this way we can actually be with each other and talk about each other and talk to each other that is going to help us form this #new earth that we all deserve. And we're just going to have these instances that aren't quite comfortable. And I see a lot of people posting on the interwebs, I know this will upset some, right? So quote unquote, I know this will upset some. And then they go and they pose a question that is a jerk question to what somebody else has posted. They're just being back into that old behavior. If that question comes through your head, right? And then you probably should stop. It probably is gonna upset and be upsetting, because we're trying to change that. When somebody says, hey, I just went through this instance and it was really uncomfortable, and like I don't even know what to do, when somebody this gal had posted in one of my groups that I'm in that she got into a car, an Uber, and her Uber driver noticed her name was it wasn't familiar to him. So instead of, just, I don't know why he even had to say anything, but he said, mentioned something about, oh, her English is really good, being that she has such a different name. And she's like, what the fuck? Like, what am I going to even do with this? And then he was like, waiting for her to respond. And she's probably just, I mean, the way she was relaying it. And I would just have my mouth hanging open. Like, what do you do with that? Right. So if if the question comes up in your head in a response to somebody sharing an experience and they're saying, hey, this feels weird, maybe you have hold a little space for that, see where they're coming from, instead of trying to come from the person that's doing something that's not kind. Whether the person is meaning to be unkind or not, we're trying to change that behavior. So you can't keep explaining away. You just have to say, that's not okay. And that's where we have to be with all of it. I will never understand somebody explaining away somebody's oppressive behavior, ever. It's never okay, ever. Ever. I don't care what the context is. And we have to change that. That is something we 100% have to transmute. If this is something that you're used to going towards, I know I'm left and right, screaming, yelling, stop when I'm in a situation, whether it's something I'm portraying or somebody else's. I'm like, no, you have to hold space for somebody sharing their experience, period. The explaining away of an oppressive behavior, that's old behavior. That's old. I keep hearing right now as I'm recording this, that's kind of got us where we are now, right? With how messed up and cult-like, we've got there's a cult-like mentality. That's a whole other episode, so I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much. But there's this cult-like mentality of, I think, trying to hold on to old behavior. And when you're trying to step into something new, if it's in your head and you're like, no, maybe ask yourself, why are you going down that route? Why are you going down the route of having to explain somebody's bad behavior away instead of holding space for somebody who's been harmed? That's to me, it's pretty simple. I always say, and you probably heard me say this before if you've been listening to this podcast, the only way over is through. We have to go through feeling uncomfortable, okay, for not appeasing bad behavior. It's going to be uncomfortable. I don't know what else to say. I know I've experienced it, and I'm okay with it because I'd rather see it change. So I'm okay feeling a little uncomfortable and not knowing. Even it's going to be, it's just going to feel so different. A lot of times we've laughed uncomfortably around behavior that we don't understand, or something that somebody said that's maybe a little mean, or like that sarcastic mean, derogatory, belittling, diminishing. It's just not okay, period. And we all have to speak up about it. It's going to take all of us, especially those that haven't experienced oppression. I think that's really important. If you have not experienced oppression in your lifetime, then you might not know. And so you're going to really have to tap in to what somebody else is explaining to you, if they do decide to explain to you or tell you what's going on. So, the Akashic view with all of this comes in as we are transmuting those old ways, those old labels or lack of labels, saying, calling things exactly as they are and not giving way to the bad behavior, not explaining away somebody's bad behavior or oppression or narcissism or racist behavior. There's no explanation for any of it. It just needs to stop. And again, we all deserve to feel how these situations have made us feel. And if somebody decides to continue to be unkind, you're gonna hear that's not okay. And it's not being sensitive. And please don't let anybody tell you that it's not okay to be sensitive about something you feel at your core. That is not their business, and that is not up to them to decide how you are supposed to feel. The way you feel is your feelings, and your feelings are valid when it comes to somebody harming you or being unkind or not holding space. We are all allowed to have space held for us by each other. And if you keep insisting, if there's people out there that keep insisting on explaining away the bad behavior or diminishing you for saying ouch or for saying that's not okay, that's not gonna be beneficial to anybody. So I know I'm kind of really coming out kind of kicking on this one, but I really do feel like let me just rephrase that. I know things have got to change drastically in order for us to fully embrace the new earth and this new way I feel like things always should have been, coming from heart space. coming out of love. And if you have stories to share, I would absolutely love to hear them, especially around the pandemic. And I mean, if you have any stories that would pertain to Akashic Soul's history, I would love to hear them. But especially around the pandemic, I know I have my own story that I'll be sharing, that I call hashtag moving in the time of COVID. It was quite terrifying at times. I don't know how else to put that. And if you have similar or you can relate to that, I'd love to hear them. It'd be great to relate to others that have gone through similar things. Every Wednesday, I do the Akashic Guided Meditations. They are live channeled, and it always pertains to what's going on at the time. Whoever shows up, though, that will help to change and make each session unique. That's Wednesdays at 9:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can find the Infinite Dance on Facebook. We can continue to talk about episodes. I am on Twitter at Infinite Dance 8. And you can also reach me on Patreon, patreon.com/The Infinite Dance, where you can purchase bonus episodes, guided meditations, and the Infinite Pillow, my buckwheat hull pillows for structural support, for sleeping, sitting, meditating, doing yoga, long car or plane rides, and it lasts you forever. They're really wonderful. I am on Instagram as Ancient Bodyworks, my business name. And if you'd like to book a private session, it's ancientbodyworks.co. And I will look forward to next week and keep asking all the questions and keep asking each other and yourselves. May I have this dance?